Hey everybody, it's Tim at Broken Dice. Welcome back to my solo wargaming project between the Romans and the tribes of the Iberian Peninsula. Uh, so this is turn 4. Let's get into the Iberian order phase next. Here we go, turn 4. All right, this cavalry unit has swept around the right flank of the Roman army. Or the left flank of the Roman army. This is the right cavalry division uh, with its division commander. It's actually the only really unit left. So I've explained what I do with cavalry units of this time period. And as long as they are not beaten and they are still victorious, they can remain on the battlefield because historically speaking, cavalry operated independently of a lot of infantry. So this is a close-up from the view of the Iberian cavalry. They were giving a charge order against this unit right here, this small unit of Romans. This would be part of a Roman cohort, let's say. All right, and in the center we've got an initiative order. The cavalry was uh, in that division since it was the only one, so it was a division order, and they passed it by plenty. But here in the central division, we had to use some initiative orders because the Romans were so close. I allowed the Iberian infantry to charge that central cohort, along with the supports, which are these two small units to the left. And moving over, yeah. Oh, here's a close-up of them making contact to the Roman cohort. And on the Iberian left, oh my goodness, yeah, this Celt-Iberian division is just having a rough game of it. Early on, they were disrupted by scorpion shooting, uh, disordered a couple of units, so only one unit could charge, and then it got beaten by the Romans, and so we've got 3 units left in this division, and now they've blundered, and their blunder caused them to take one move to the right. So these back 2 units, because it's kind of like in a boar's head formation. The one to the in the back row with the left to the left of the division commander there, it's going to move through that unit to the right because that unit can't move further right because it will be involved in that combat to the right. So of the center uh, Scutari units. So they're going to get pushed out of the way. They'll have to take a test for disorder. And this is how it wound up. They got pushed back out of the ranks and they became disordered. But luckily for that division commander, only that unit became disordered because, boy, it could have turned really bad really quickly. And now we're going to have to take a little bit different view. This is kind of looking from the Roman side, but it gives a better look at what's going on here. So as you can see up top, we've got the central Scutari units have yet to move into contact, but where these brown arrows are, this shows those units moving forward to engage that Roman cohort. Now, the Scutari that are in the front rank, that first unit there, they're shaken and they're disordered. They can't receive orders. So any unit that's going to charge that uh, Roman cohort has got to move through them. And so that unit that's behind them are going to move through that shaken Scutari unit. They're going to have to take a test for disorder before they get there. If they fail that test, yeah, it's going to be bad for them. It's going to be bad for them. Now, the cavalry that's going to be supporting this charge, um, they don't have to test. But if the other unit becomes disordered, it's going to turn into a real jumbled mess for them. And which really wouldn't surprise me because on this side of the table, it's just been one catastrophe for the Iberians right after the other one. All right, we can see as another view, and you can kind of see how jumbled up they are. And yeah, so here's another card here explaining what's going on with those Iberians moving through each other. And here you can kind of get a better look at that unit that's right behind them, because they were in the combat with that Roman cohort before, the one with the yellow shields that's going to get charged now. And they were acting as support for the unit that actually, the Scutari that actually became shaken. So them being shaken, and this is the only unit that's really viable. So he gives a division order for them to charge. Okay. Oops. There we go. End of the Iberian order phase. Iberian combat phase coming up. All right. So here we're back to the Iberian right, or the Roman left, in that cavalry that charged the part of a Roman cohort. Here's a side view of that picture. Here we go. This is them charging a little bit. Now they don't get the downhill charge bonus because they're already got the bonus for charging. Boom. End of that small unit. And it wasn't really that they caused that much damage, just rolling so low on the break test table. And so that small cohort broke. And now they're going to do their sweeping advance. They had to roll for their disorder. They passed that. And here's the unit they're going to slam into their flank. All right. This is interesting. In the combat, even though they were charging them in the flank and they had the charge bonuses and everything like that, they became shaken, the cavalry unit. And the small unit of Romans became shaken as well. So both units will have to take a test for break, and they both give ground. So funny, so funny. They're both shaken, but they both give ground. So that'll be interesting. And that I call it. Why did I write Scutari down? And that is so totally incorrect. They're just the cavalry unit. Well, that's misleading as hell. Well, anyway, that cavalry unit will have to turn and due to proximity and face that nearest Roman cohort. All right, now we're into more of the center right, with the Iberian general fighting the two disordered units of Romans, two cohorts actually. These are the ones that in the last video these units blundered into each other, and that was because if you really should go back and look at the video, can you see how this all kind of turned out to be this way? Is these Scutari units that are off to his left had to fall back from combat. Everybody had to move out of their way. One moved right, one moved left, and it just was just total chaos on the top of the hill for the Iberians. But here we have this combat going on now between the Iberian general and two Roman cohorts that are disordered, by the way. Here's a close-up. The cohorts lose. I thought even with two cohorts, even though they were disordered, I thought they would probably do better, but they didn't. Poor dice rolling. And so they had to give ground disordered, which basically means they're going to be disordered for their part of turn 4, which is a shame. This Iberian general, he had choices. He could have moved forward and stayed in contact with the enemy. But he also had where he could just maneuver as an option because they won the combat. So I looked at it, and so I gave a dice. I did a dice roll to try to decide for myself, so I didn't have any of my own personal bias in it. But you had like a 50-50 shot. He's either going to advance and stay in contact with these two cohorts, even though these reserve units have come onto the table and they're right there with the two cohorts that are disordered, and or the general could fall back to the hill. So I did like a even and odd sort of dice roll, and it came up that he fell back towards the top of the hill. This is kind of the position before he makes his move. There's an arrow depicting the position that he will be in, and there's his final position on top of the hill. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know in a game, even in a game, if I would have tried to stay in contact, because as you look, you've got, well, you got those three small units of Roman legionnaires coming up to support these units. Eventually, those disorders are going to go away, and he would have been out there all by himself. So I'm not so sure staying in contact with that unit, if I was playing the game, that I would have done. But I rolled a dice, and this is the way it came out. All right, combat in the Iberian Center. Again, I thought with the massive numbers of attacks on this poor cohort that's kind of all out there by himself up on the hill, that would have been the end of these guys. But no, they held their ground. I mean, it's fortunate to roll high on the break test table, let's just say. No matter how much damage you take, it's always good when you are really, really high. And really the combat in the middle really wasn't that one-sided too much. I mean, it's it was just like a point or two, and so I rolled really, really high on the let's see, really, really high on the break test. Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Gosh, I apologize. Maybe I need a drink. Anyway, they held their ground. I was just amazed by that, you know. Yeah, I rolled, as I'm looking at my notes here, I rolled, they only lost the combat by 1. I rolled an 11, which is a 10, hold ground with no penalty. But they still are shaken, though. So hopefully by next turn, somebody will be there to lend them some help. Okay, combat on the Iberian left. Now this is going to get probably pretty weird. Okay, so you can see down there the Celt-Iberian at the bottom of the screen. They're milling about the table, not doing anything. You can see the two Roman cohorts coming into the flank here. Now on the last turn, they failed to reach on their orders. They only moved 1. So, but they are close, and they're close to their turn starting. So I would assume that any orders given to them, they should easily make it into combat. And we're fighting this combat between the cavalry, the Iberian Scutari, and the Roman cohort with the yellow shields. Here's kind of a close-up of what's going on. That disordered Scutari unit there with the red dice and the number 5, that's the one that everybody, the other Scutari unit had to move through and take a test for disorder to charge these Romans, which they passed, by the way. But at the end of this turn, this disorder marker will come off from these guys, so that'll be an advantage in the turn 5, I guess, if they're able to survive the charge of these Romans coming up on their flank. Here's a view from behind that Roman cohort. You can see that the cavalry to the right of the screen supporting the Scutari. All right, here's another view from that supporting cavalry unit's viewpoint. The Romans lost the combat. Not by much. Not by much. Only by 3. But again, rolling high on the break test table, they gave ground. and they gave ground in good order, but again, they're shaken. And then I rolled another dice to see whether this unit would stay in contact and with the Romans that gave ground, and I rolled high enough, and they did with their supports. So this is what's caused this large gap between the unit that they had to move through and where they've wound up now, pushing the Romans back. Now these two Roman units, they're both shaken at this point in time. It's they're really holding their ground, and it's only due because I'm rolling high on the break test table. Most of the time when I get a unit that's shaken, I never roll high on that stupid on that table. Every time I roll on it, it's like 3 or 4, and they're always destroyed. All right, here we get a top-down view of the battlefield. You kind of see where the positions of people. Now, due to proximity, because we're coming to the end of the Iberian phase, proximity takes place. So you can see on the left-hand screen, the cohort that had been moved through has turned to face the Romans. The cavalry unit that was pushed back and shaken, the Iberian cavalry unit at the top right of the screen, has turned to face the small cohorts, and the small cohort has turned to face the cavalry unit, where the two disordered units have yet to do anything because, well, I just leave because they're disordered. They're not organized enough to spin around and, you know, change their facing and all that kind of stuff. All right. And here's a little note. Yeah, I wanted to put this note in here showing that they had to turn and face. And believe it or not, this will play an important part in the Roman turn. Believe it, this small little turn of this unit due to proximity just cracks me up how things work. Okay, the Iberian division commander moves back at the end of his turn to join this unit, and hopefully, oh yeah, I see, he did do a rally order too. I forgot to put a little card up here to say that, but he did a rally order for them, so they're no longer shaken. They've got 5 points of damage on them, but they're no longer shaken. And that is the end of the Iberian cohort phase. Yeah, at this point in time, if I were you, I would take a little break and go get you something to eat, because we're going to start on the Roman part of turn 4 right now. Here we go, Roman orders phase, turn 4. All right, let's look at the Roman left with their Roman general there. You can see by the little arrow, he's going to charge that cavalry unit and try to get rid of them. Yeah, that can't have those guys running around there all freed up, and especially with the division commander with him, who can take, if he passes that order, a rally order, he can take that shaken away, and then they would be able to maneuver around and be quite a thorn in the Roman side. Here's another view of that where they've turned around to face this cavalry. Here's another view, kind of shows the distance they need to travel, and orders on the Roman right. Charge orders. And he gave individual orders, and both times he only passed the order by 1. So here we can take a better look at this. The nearest unit was able to crash into the flank of the ongoing combat. That was pretty much a done deal. I mean, it was like 3 or 4 inches, and that's all he had to move. And like I said before, that where they had to turn and face due to proximity this Roman cohort that was close to them, within 12 inches. I think it was like 10 or 11. No, not quite. Maybe it was 8 or 9 inches. They were just outside of a normal move away from them. But having to twist their right flank back and around to line up right, gave them just enough distance to where when that Roman commander gave them that order and they only passed it by one, they didn't move far enough to get into contact. And I think if this goes another turn, that could be very, very bad for the Romans. Well, if that Celtiberian unit ever gets its act together and comes down off the hill, it could be bad for them. But we'll see. All right, here's another look. You can see that Roman cohort slamming into the side there of that Scutari unit. That's not good. Even though the Romans in front of them are shaken, that getting hit in the flank with a full cohort like that, a standard size unit basically, yeah, it could be bad for them. And that's the end of the Roman orders. And now we're going to go into the combat phase of turn 4 for the Romans. Here we go. He leads that the Roman general leads his cohort into combat, and then it flanked the Roman position, and boom! It didn't take long. I mean, it was damage, no damage in return, failed their break, and that was it. So that's one whole division down. That's one division out of 4. So that combat on the far right is going to be very critical, because if they are able to break that Scutari and that cavalry unit, that'll be the end of the game, because that'll be 2 broken divisions, and that'll be 2 out of 4, and that looks like a good time for the Iberians to cut their losses and get the hell out of Dodge. All right. That didn't happen. I'm so amazed. I really thought that unit charging in the flank would just tear them a new one, but it didn't happen. A combination of several things. Bad dice rolling, you know, and some lucky saves, because the Romans really, I mean, they did damage. But the Scutari needing 6s, by the way, to save, out of the I think they did like 11 damage, or no, what did they do? They did like 9 damage. The Scutari saved most of those, and yeah, it was pretty bad. I really thought that then on this Roman right that it would be over with. But you can see at the top there where that red marker is, those Romans, it was just too much. They were so outnumbered and being shaken that the number of attacks were just so overwhelming. And it was the first time that I rolled really low on the break test table for the Romans the entire day, and they broke and fled from the field. But that combat on the right, the one I really thought would be the turning point, the one division did not get into combat, and the other division, the other cohort did. Didn't do enough damage, and even shaken, both the Romans and the Scutari both had to take break tests, and both of them held their ground with no penalty. And so that brings us to the end of turn 4. Really kind of interesting the way this is all playing out. You can see on the picture on the left just the number of troops the Iberians have left on this side of the table that are now not engaged. The question will be is whether that division can sweep down off the hill, blow through these units, and save the day. Because I think I've come to not be able to rely on the Celtiberians getting their act together on the other side of the table to come down and help that division. If they don't, then it could be a very short turn 5. Because if say they blunder again, I just don't see those units in the Iberian force being able to hold on with that unit in their flank. Now, if for some reason the Celtiberians are able to sweep down off that hill and and do enough damage and blow through that Roman unit there and then come to their aid all in one fell swoop, then maybe they've got a shot. But I'm not sure that's going to happen. But we'll see. Turn 5 I'll be working on this week, and I'll probably have a video up next week of what happens. So if you like this, give me a thumbs up. Got a comment, leave it down below. And if you'd like to subscribe, you like this sort of presentation of battle reports, this is a solo version. Hopefully I'll get in some games with a buddy of mine and we can go through and do a little one-on-one Hail Caesar. And please subscribe if you haven't. But if you got some comments, you got some suggestions for me even about how you do things, about how you would like to see some of this information presented. If you got a better way, let me know. I'll take any advice I can get. So everybody stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you next time.